Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I just wanted to do a quick follow-up review of this book, North Korea's Hidden Revolution by Jieun Baek, and talk about it because I mentioned it in a previous video and I thought it was an excellent book on North Korea and worthy of follow-up. I have read a few other books on North Korea in the past, namely The Red Years by Bondi, a collection of poems, also his short stories collection called The Accusation. Those are both excellent books. I also read Dear Leader by Jang Jin-sung, which was another 5-star book. Very interesting inside look at the workings of the North Korean government from somebody who had been part of it. I've also read Not Forgotten, The True Story of My Imprisonment in North Korea by Kenneth Bae, and I was really touched by that book in particular. I had been following Bae's imprisonment at the time and praying for him, and the story of his imprisonment and eventual return to freedom is really good. So that's pretty much the scope of the books on North Korea I've read so far, and the latest is this one. This one is not exactly, a singular memoir, but I was impressed. This book contains a lot of accounts from various defectors, and the theme here is, as it says, how the information underground is transforming a closed society. So this book focuses on how does information from the outside world enter North Korea? How do people react to it? What kinds of technology do they use to gain a bigger view of their situation and the outside world? So I really thought this book was good from many angles because it doesn't just talk about technology. It doesn't just talk about politics. It's kind of all encompassing as a book on this subject. So first chapter assumes that you haven't read any books on North Korea. So it kind of goes over the history, the Kim dynasty, and the propaganda that has basically been fed to multiple generations at this point of North Koreans. Then the second chapter goes into accounts from people who are defectors and had access to information about South Korea, China, the United States while they were in North Korea. Then the next chapter, chapter 3, talks about what we would call lo-fi technology. So things as simple as radios and even sending balloons over the border with information being dropped in leaflets. All that kind of thing is in chapter 3. And that's a pretty significant portion of this book, simply because some of the most successful ways to reach people is through lo-fi technology and just more what might be considered primitive ways of relaying information, such as sneaking CDs across the river that divides North Korea from China, and using cell phones, but timing your calls so that you're only talking for like a few minutes. All those kind of things feature heavily in this book throughout, but especially in chapter 3. Chapter 4 talks about other types of media, but it's kind of a continuation of 3 in a more, 21st century setting. And then chapter 5 talks about the younger generation, so people in their early 20s who have defected, and the way media has affected their lives as North Koreans. Many of them actually having more access than previous generations, and also more interest, perhaps. And then the last chapter kind of summarizes it and actually goes into some interesting policy and historical insights, I guess. I'm not going to recap this entire book, but that's kind of the gist of it. So she introduces us to various real life defectors who most of them, I believe, have their names changed for security. I was really, really impressed with the history section because even though I knew a lot of this information, it was very well summarized. And I was just touched by this book throughout. There's a lot of talk in here about the psychology of someone who's grown up in a repressive society. And, of course, there's this natural tendency not to trust other people because of the repercussions of breaking the law and even just, people like not knowing whether they're spying on you or not in your own community. But she does talk about how trust does get established. She talks about how people who have defected manage to send money back to their loved ones. Oh, in some parts of North Korea, it's actually somewhat prevalent for people to be watching South Korean dramas and Western movies secretly, and they will have these networks of friends and relatives that they trust, and they swap films. It's really fascinating, and I did learn a lot that I had no idea of before. It also got me thinking a lot about devices. What are the best kinds of devices for people who do not have, a steady access to electricity because the government, shuts it off? Solar might be a good option for them. Some of them do use solar-powered electronics. There's also various techniques or tricks people have used to rig electronics to be more safe from censorship. She didn't go into that in great detail. Obviously, there's a lot that they don't want to be, made public for obvious reasons, but I thought that was really fascinating, and I'm sure this was published in 2016, so there's probably a lot more developments in that area now. Oh, the other thing that was interesting is sending information in. So she builds up this case for why that is an effective way to bring about change in North Korea, and she does that through many layers of personal accounts from various people and also research that's been done by people outside of North Korea over decades. And one thing that I learned is that the act of sending in information, it may seem like a shot in the dark, but a lot of that does fall into people's hands who are going to watch it. Even the people responsible for censoring it, they will quite often, in fact, decide to watch it themselves when they're not supposed to. But yeah, it's really interesting. And she also talks about, too, how just getting information or movies from the outside world, it's not guaranteed to be life-changing. Some people, when you grow up knowing one reality, it's, of course, like for anyone, it would be really hard to leave that reality. And there's some people that have just chosen not to. But especially with the younger generation, sending in media has helped a lot. And not just political dissident literature, if you will, but just any kind of media from other countries, whether that's movies or music. It doesn't have to be political in nature. So that's just kind of an overview of some of the things I learned in here. There was a lot more. I was very happy with the quality and depth and breadth of this book. I think it's a great introduction to this topic. And if you're trying to find more information about North Korea outside of the memoirs, which are also, of course, excellent, this kind of summarizes it nicely and also ties in insights on approaches for promoting democracy, or at least more self-government in places like North Korea. And there was so much in it that I just got me thinking about, even not North Korea, but in general, how countries can be transformed by the free spread of information. So that's all I had for this video. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've read this book, if there's any other books on North Korea you'd recommend, and I hope you're all staying safe. Thanks for watching.